Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. It started like most arguments do over something trivial. Margaret was brushing past me in the kitchen, her face set in that familiar, exasperated expression. I could tell she was annoyed before she even opened her mouth. "Logan, could you at least try to help out around here?" she said, setting a stack of mail on the counter with more force than necessary. "I feel like I'm the only one who cares about keeping this place together." I sighed, setting down my coffee. "I do help, Margaret. I handle the bills and make sure everything is running smoothly. Just because I'm not scrubbing the floors doesn't mean I'm not contributing." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "Oh, so you're contributing? You think paying the bills is enough? There's more to a marriage than money, Logan." The tension in the air was palpable, and I could feel my frustration rising. "Margaret, I'm working long hours to keep us comfortable. Can't you at least acknowledge that?" She rolled her eyes. "Comfortable? Is that what you call this? You're so wrapped up in your work you barely notice what's going on around you. You don't even notice me anymore." I felt a pang of guilt but pushed it aside. "That's not fair. I'm doing my best." "That's your best?" she snapped. "Your best isn't enough. You're just slacking, Logan, and I'm tired of it." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my cool. "What do you want from me, Margaret? I'm here, aren't I? I've always been here." Her eyes flashed with anger. "Physically, sure, but emotionally, you've checked out a long time ago." The argument dragged on, circling the same points, each of us digging in deeper. Eventually, I had enough. I grabbed my jacket, needing some air. "I'm going for a walk," I muttered, slamming the door behind me. The days after that argument were a blur. It wasn't that we didn't speak to each other. It was more like we had both grown silent. The tension in the house was palpable. Every word felt like it would ignite something, so we both avoided speaking unless absolutely necessary. Margaret had become a ghost in the house, retreating into herself more and more. I noticed her slipping away, not just emotionally but physically too. She spent hours out of the house, telling me she had errands or needed to clear her head. She'd come home late in the evening, looking more tired than usual, but there was something about her, a distance in her eyes that wasn't there before. I noticed her clothes getting a little more expensive, her usual routine of being home in the evenings shifting to late-night spa treatments, and weekends filled with shopping bags I hadn't seen before. It wasn't like her. I couldn't help but feel something was off. One evening, after a particularly draining day at work, I decided to leave the office early, hoping we could have a real conversation, even if it meant getting through the awkwardness. I wanted to fix things, to show her that I still cared and that I was willing to make it work. I figured a nice dinner out would help us reconnect. I hoped it would be a chance to fix things between us. But when I walked through the door, the silence hit me again. Margaret wasn't home. I sank down onto the couch, waiting, the minutes dragging by. An hour passed before the door finally opened. Margaret walked in, looking fresh from another day of indulgence, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, carrying a shopping bag from a high-end store I didn't recognize. She looked almost distant, like I was no longer even part of the picture. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, though I felt the frustration bubbling up inside me. "Hey," she replied, avoiding my gaze. She dropped the shopping bag on the counter and started heading toward the bathroom. "Where were you?" I called out, standing up. She turned slightly, giving me a quick glance. "Just at the spa," she said, her tone cool, like it was a regular routine. "Again? You've been at the spa every day this week. Margaret, what's going on?" Her eyes flickered with irritation, but she didn't say anything. She just disappeared into the bathroom. I stood there for a moment, my frustration boiling over. I had been hoping for an evening to fix things, but this wasn't what I imagined. I grabbed my phone and opened the bank app, checking our financial statements. What I saw made my stomach drop. Thousands of dollars. On spa treatments. On designer clothes. On things I never remembered her mentioning. She had gone on shopping sprees, and every day for the last week the charges kept adding up. There was no end to it. The credit card bill was the tipping point. I couldn't stand it anymore. When she came out of the bathroom, I was already waiting for her, arms crossed, trying to keep the anger from spilling over. "Margaret," I began, my voice tight, "we need to talk." She glanced at me briefly before reaching for the shopping bag. "Not now, Logan," she said, her tone dismissive. "I'm tired. I've had a long day." I grabbed her wrist before she could retreat again. "No, now," I said firmly. "I've had enough of this. What's going on with you? You've been gone every day, spending money like it's nothing, and you won't even talk to me. Do you even care about this marriage anymore?" Her eyes flared with irritation. She pulled her wrist free and walked a few steps away from me. "I care, Logan," she said, her voice cold. "But you wouldn't understand. You wouldn't understand what it's like feeling like this." I clenched my fists, trying to hold back the frustration threatening to break free. "Feeling like what, Margaret? You've been shutting me out for days. You're not even trying to fix things. All I want is for us to talk, but instead you're out spending money we don't have, and I don't even know who you are anymore." "Don't act like you care," she snapped, her voice rising. "You're always so caught up in your work and your routines. You don't see me. You don't see what I need." I stared at her, the anger starting to fade into something colder, something worse. "What do you need, Margaret?" I asked, my voice quiet. "What do you need from me? Because I can't keep doing this. I can't keep trying if you won't even talk to me." She looked at me for a moment, and for a second I thought I saw something in her eyes. But then she turned away again. "I need things to change, but I don't think you're the one who can do that." I was stunned. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my voice strained. "But I do know this. I can't keep pretending nothing's wrong." She didn't say anything, but I saw the way her shoulders stiffened, the way her eyes seemed to close off, and I knew then that she was done trying too. The next day things were still tense. We barely spoke, communicating only through curt exchanges. I decided to come home early, hoping to patch things up. As I walked in, I heard Margaret's voice from the living room. She was on the phone, her tone hushed but unmistakable. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up, Sarah," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. "Logan's clueless. He thinks just because he pays the bills everything's fine. Honestly, I'm only with him for the money," she continued, her words slicing through me. "He doesn't satisfy me anymore. I have to pretend everything's okay, but it's exhausting." My chest tightened, a lump forming in my throat. I wanted to walk in, confront her, but I couldn't move. "And Alex," she said with a bitter laugh. "He actually knows how to make me feel alive. Logan doesn't have a clue. He's so wrapped up in his own world." I stood frozen in the doorway, my heart racing as Margaret's words cut through me. Who the hell is Alex? And how could he make her feel alive in a way I couldn't? "I took Alex to the spa yesterday," she said, her voice thick with satisfaction. "It was so much better than anything Logan ever does for me." My fists clenched by my sides as the flood of anger and hurt swirled in my chest. "Afterward, we went to that hotel by the marina," she continued, her tone full of excitement. "We spent the evening there, Logan's money paying for everything. I can't remember the last time I felt this good. It's like nothing with Logan anymore." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She wasn't just cheating on me with Alex. She was using my own money to pay for everything. "I can't bring Alex back here all the time," she added with a nervous laugh, her tone suddenly shifting to something more cautious. "What if Logan catches us? I can't have him know." The weight of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. All the years I had spent trusting her, all the sacrifices I had made, and now it was all reduced to nothing. She wasn't just dissatisfied with me, she was actively betraying me, giving herself to someone else, someone I didn't even know. And worse yet, she was bringing him into our home, the place where we were supposed to build a life together. I quietly left the house, the anger bubbling up inside of me, mixing with disbelief. I couldn't just let this go. I couldn't let her destroy everything without consequences. I needed to gather myself, to think about what I would do next. That night, as I lay in bed, a plan began to form. I would make her pay for this betrayal. I wouldn't just walk away quietly. No, I would gather proof that she was cheating, right in our own home. The next day, as soon as Margaret left, I took action. I bought hidden cameras and spent the day installing them, one in the living room, another by the front door, and one in the bedroom. By the time she returned, I had everything in place. When she walked in, I casually looked up from the couch. I needed an excuse to leave the house and give her space so she could bring Alex over. So I told her I would go on a business trip, but in reality, I would stay at a nearby hotel and watch the footage from my laptop. "Hey, just wanted to let you know I'm going on a business trip tomorrow for a few days," I said, watching her closely. She glanced at me, her face unchanged. "Oh, okay," she said, almost too casually. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. I kept my expression neutral, hiding the fact that I knew exactly what she would be doing while I was away. The next morning, I left the house early and headed to a nearby hotel. I set up my laptop and started watching the footage from the hidden cameras. The tension in my chest was almost unbearable as I waited for something, anything that would confirm what I already knew. Margaret went out again just like I expected. The hours dragged on as I waited for her to come back. Finally, she returned, walking through the door, acting completely normal, as if everything was fine. There was nothing strange about her behavior so far. Then, in the evening, a man came to the door, probably Alex. He stepped inside, and I watched as they greeted each other, kissing passionately. My stomach twisted as they exchanged a few words, and then they made their way straight to the bedroom. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but at the same time, I felt a cold sense of relief. This was it, the proof I needed. I turned my attention to the camera in the bedroom and watched as they went inside. The door closed behind them, and what happened next confirmed everything. They didn't waste any time. My heart hammered in my chest as I saw them together in bed, naked. It was undeniable. The betrayal was right in front of me. The next day I went to a lawyer. I had to protect my assets, my finances. I needed to make sure I had everything in place before the divorce started. I didn't trust Margaret to play fair after everything that had happened, and I wasn't going to let her take a single thing from me in this divorce. Then I transferred all the money from our joint account into my personal account, just in case. After that, I packed my things from the hotel and headed back to the house. Margaret wasn't there again, so I waited for her to come home, ready to confront her. After about 2 hours, I heard the door open. I sat on the couch waiting, my mind racing with the images from the night before. Then I saw them, Margaret and Alex, kissing passionately as she opened the door. They walked in, their lips still locked, oblivious to my presence. I stayed silent, watching them move further into the house without a word. I wanted her to realize I was there, to feel the weight of the moment before I spoke. It didn't take long for her to notice. When she saw me sitting there, her face drained of color, and she froze in place. "Logan, what are you doing here?" she demanded, panic rising in her voice. Alex stood there for a moment, stunned. Then he bolted out of the door like a coward, not even stopping to say a word. I watched him run out, trying to escape the mess he'd helped create. I stood up from the couch, my voice steady but filled with anger. "I worked all those hours so you could have everything, and this is how you repay me." "I was lonely," she said, her voice shaking, trying to defend herself. "You thought I wouldn't find out about your lover?" I shot back. "That you'd spend my money on him, on dates, on spa treatments while I'm working my butt off to provide for us?" She tried to speak, but I cut her off. "Shut up," I snapped. "You've said enough." I pulled my phone out of my pocket, the weight of the moment pressing on me. "Now I'm going to show everyone who you really are," I said as I started sending the footage. I sent the video of her kissing Alex, followed by the footage of them in the bedroom, naked. I wrote a message to family and friends. This is who she really is. She's been lying to all of us. Margaret's eyes widened in horror as she watched the messages come in. "What did you do?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I made sure everyone knows the truth," I spat, my voice thick with anger. I looked at her one last time. "It's over. I've already filed for divorce. Pack your things and leave my house. I don't want you here anymore." She stood there, stunned, unable to speak. The woman I had once loved, the woman who had betrayed me in the worst way, was finally gone. I didn't stay to watch her pack, but I knew she would have no choice but to leave. And as I walked out of the room, I knew I had taken the first step in reclaiming my life. The divorce was quick and bitter. Margaret fought for whatever she could, but the evidence I'd gathered, the videos I sent to family and friends, sealed her fate. In the end, she didn't get a dime from the divorce. Everything I had worked for was protected. Her reputation was destroyed, and the shame she felt became something she could never escape. Her friends turned their backs, leaving her to pick up the pieces of the life she had recklessly torn apart. Margaret never fully recovered from the humiliation, struggling to rebuild a life outside the one we had shared. The truth weighed heavily on her wherever she went, and deep down, I knew she could never outrun it. For me, it marked the beginning of something new. I wasn't sure where I was headed, but I had taken back control. The scars would remain, but they'd serve as constant reminders that I would never allow such betrayal again, and for the first time in a while I felt like I could breathe. Thank you for watching.